Hi, I'm Carrie. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I'm doing a spring vibe deck video. These are all the decks in my collection, or almost all the decks in my collection that I feel have a really spring vibe to them, and ones that I will tend to gravitate towards during the spring season. That doesn't mean I won't pull them out at other times of the year, because I absolutely will, but because they give me that feeling of spring, or I'm really wanting to step into that spring seasonal energy, then these are the decks I pull. And the very first one is the Pastoral Tarot. I think this is basically the epitome of spring. I really do enjoy this deck. I've talked about this deck before. I've talked about how the images in this deck really bring me back home. While not all of the images represent the area that I live in, the majority, I would say 90% of the deck does, or has been someplace I've visited, and really puts me into that mindset of spring or summer because of that imagery corresponding to the season of where I'm at. Like, I don't live in a desert type area, so this one doesn't necessarily fit, but this one, for sure, this one definitely, I can see any of that in our area. And we do have coyotes in our area, believe it or not. So, but the farmers markets and the fences and the barns, and that can all be seen in or on the backcountry roads here. Yeah, I don't have to drive too far to see something like that also. So yeah, this is really a deck that I like to pull out in spring. I did start to use it last spring, but I kind of got sidetracked, not because of the deck's fault or anything. It was my own personal stuff, but this was very enjoyable to work with. Another tarot that I like to use in spring is the Joie de Vivre Tarot by Paulina Cassidy. This is another deck that I feel is the epitome of springtime. The pastel colors, the flowers, just the way the imagery is. It's fun and it's light, and it really does put you in that spring season mindset. And I like to use this with clients in the springtime. And God, this is such a sweet deck. This is the only Paulina Cassidy deck that I own. I know the other one is like this, I think Spirit Song maybe is a favorite or whatever of theirs, but yeah, this is the only one I have. And well, we'll just go like this, and I absolutely adore it. And I don't think you could say spring seasonal deck without mentioning the Tarot of Mystical Moment. Now, actually, in all honesty, this deck is a workhorse deck for me. I use this deck for everything in every season. It has really become a favorite of mine. But when you step into this mystical world, this fantasy world, this dreamlike world, with the gardens and the flowers, and it puts me in Alice in Wonderland almost vibes, I can't help but use this, or want to use this deck in the springtime. But this is a big staple in my practice. And like I said, I will use it all year long, but it just says spring. It's just lovely. And speaking of Alice in Wonderland, I can't go without mentioning Tarot in Wonderland by Barbara Moore as a spring deck too. I really think this is another deck that can be used at any time of the year, but for some reason, I gravitate towards wanting to pull this deck out in the springtime. I don't know how that came about or when that came about for me, but I really do. I just tend to use this one in the spring, or even my other Alice deck by Dame Darcy. For some reason, I just want to use that one in the springtime also. It's been quite some time since I used this one though, so it's nice to get it out and look at it again. And Lisa Papez does a fantastic walkthrough of talking about this deck. So if you're unsure about that, check out her channel and you can find that video there. Another deck that gives me those springtime vibes is this one, the Tarot Muha by Los Scarabeo. This one is an all year reader for me, but it really does have a spring energy to it. And I just think it's the coloring. The coloring of the deck lends to that feeling of spring season. But this is the deck I actually use a lot when I want to talk to spirit guides, angelic energy, anything along those lines. Although influence of the angels seems to be taking over a little bit recently, but as we're moving into the lighter time of the year, I will start pulling this one out again to do those types of readings if I wanted to. And it's lovely. And you rarely hear people talking about this. This is an older deck. I mean, the copyright for it is 2014, so it's a really old deck. But I just adore the images on here. Which, didn't I just say that about another deck? Apparently those are the only words I know today. But right out of the box, as soon as I got it, it became a massive staple in my collection. And my decks are in rows now, and so I have them in there grouped together, but like my first row is all my favorites. And this one sits in that first row, like next to the Light Seers and, you know, a couple other decks. So this is a really great one. I know people, like I said, have moved on from this because it's so old, but I really do treasure that deck. The next one that I'm going to say is a spring type deck, and that is the Rosebud Tarot. Do you know I have not picked this deck back up since I started the 78, what was that challenge called? 78, oh my gosh. I'm completely blanking on that challenge that was done at the end of last year that I struggled to get through. However, this really does lean towards spring energy, and I think it's because of all the roses portrayed in it. It just really makes you think of spring, makes you think of things blossoming with that rose energy, because there's roses almost on every single card, and it really does put you in that mindset of the garden and that sort of energy. Growth, puts me in the mind of manifesting, you know. So I definitely would put this in the spring category. So let's show a couple oracles. The first one I have that I tend to pull out in the springtime is the Sacred Forest Oracle. Now, with the way the images are in this, which are a little bit on the darker coloring, you wouldn't necessarily think springtime energy, spring vibes, but for some reason this one is the one that I pull out in the spring, and her Sacred Destiny is one that I would most often pull in the summer. Although I think Sacred Destiny could really be used. They both could be used at any time of the year. I mean, look how dark this is. You wouldn't think spring type energy, but I think because it's very foresty, it just puts me in the mind of, you know, walking the path in the woods, down to the river, just hanging out in the woods in general. I did that a lot as a kid, and that's why. I think that's why I associate this with the springtime. I really do enjoy this deck. I can't remember if I spoke in another video. I pathwork a lot with this deck, where I go in to talk to the spirit of the card about the energy of the card and, you know, what message they may have for me and so on. That's really how I use this deck. I know the Sacred Destiny is favorited more over this one, but I really enjoy this deck. The stag makes me think of the deer that are in our yard all the time. We'll start to see them here pretty soon. So, but yeah, I just don't know. It just really, spring nights maybe, because it doesn't say summer nights to me for some reason, like springtime nights. It almost, I mean, this may sound ridiculous, but looking at the images, I almost get like that wet mossy vibe to it, and we tend to get, you know, a lot of rain this time of year. So yeah, that's why I think that's why I gravitate towards this deck in the springtime. Another deck I think would be fantastic to use in the spring and has that spring energy is Unlocking the Secret Garden. Matter of fact, I just used this one with clients not that long ago, and I mean, you've got the flowers. Butterflies I think are more summer, but I think it's just all these flower energy that, you know, your garden reawakening, the little buds coming up on the trees. You could see the little bit of life coming out from underneath the dead flowers or dead bushes and starting to reemerge new. And that's what this deck says to me. The blossoming of spring is really the vibe of this deck. Another oracle, springtime vibes, gateway oracle cards. Now, she also has the, oh, I did a comparing Denise Lynn decks. What's that? Sacred Travelers. I had to look in my cupboard real quick. The Sacred Travelers deck really has that wintertime feeling to it, but this one with the imagery on here is spring moving into summer. This could almost be a transition deck of spring into summer with these bright beautiful colors, this yellow and the pretty blue border around the edge. I really do enjoy this deck. I like, is this the one that has the mantra in the guidebook? No, this one has the questions to ask yourself in the guidebook, which I really do like. It kind of has the mantra here right on the front. Healing the past, I step into my future with strength and clarity. This deck is really old. This is a 2012 copyright, so you're talking it's 12 years old, and that's about how long I've had it because I got it when it came out. I don't know what the deck is listed for on the website now, but it was originally listed for $15.95. So, but yeah, this just starting fresh. I mean, how much more into the spring can you get? And the images that go along with it. This is just so wonderful to use this time of year. Another energy that I like to step into during the spring season is fairy energy. Now, I haven't really fully worked completely in fairy energy, so to speak, but I've had this deck for a long time. This is the Faery Forest by Lucy Cavendish, and I mean, even though this looks winter vibe right here, for some reason, I tend to pull this fairy deck out in the springtime. And I thought it would be, let me see here, it would be perfect, maybe, I don't know, to pair alongside the Hidden Realms. I picked up this deck last year and have not used it. I have not touched it yet, not for any specific reason, but this deck really has that spring vibe to it also, more so than like the Witch Sister. The Witch Sister feels like very fall, winter season energy to it, and this one feels very light spring, summer, even though it's Fae energy. So I'd like to maybe try working with some fairy energy this spring, something different. But yeah, this is the very first fairy deck I've ever owned, and for some reason, like I said, I don't know why, I just tend to pull it out and use it in the springtime. So just a couple more decks to show. I'm going to show another oracle, and this is Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron Reed. And this one is an all time of year reader, actually. But if you wanted to like separate her decks out into like seasonal vibes, this one really does have that spring energy to it. And it's really because of the color palette of it. This has a very soft, pastel, soothing color palette. This one, I think, I have it out, so let's just play around. I think would work beautifully with the Tarot Muha, which I'm going to have to put that down as a pairing to try out, because I really do think these would work wonderfully together. So, but yeah, this one here, it really does just have the lighter time of the year energy to it, even though I've used it all year round before. Because there was a time in my life where I had very few decks, and this was like one that saw a lot of use. I mean, a lot of use. Oh, look at that, Ace of Cups and Soulmate. That's beautiful. What do we got? Queen of Pentacles and No Place Like Home. Wow, that's a fantastic pairing there. And is this a queen? I believe this is the Queen of Wands and Loyal Heart. This is definitely going down as a pairing to try out. I had no intentions of pairing up decks. It was just sitting out here while I was showing this. But yeah, these two are going to be paired together, and I'll have to report back on that one. So the next deck that is springtime vibes is the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. You cannot say spring without saying the name of this deck. I don't know, I'm just making it up as I go along, but it really does. It gives me that springtime energy, and it really gives me summer energy also. Put you in that whole fantasy spirit, makes you, fantasy headspace, makes you feel like anything is possible kind of thing when you're in that fantasy realm headspace. At least that's how my mind processes the whole thing. But I think this is an adorable deck. I use it very sparingly. I've talked about that before. But yeah, this is just, you know, let's prance around in the forest, kind of like my the Sacred Forest Oracle. So lots of greens on these cards. Just, you know, and if you know, some of them is just like this green where the trees are still bare a little bit, and how things are right here and where I'm at, the trees are still bare. They're just starting to bud, but everything is starting to green up. The lawns are starting to perk up and start to grow again. And yeah, this is just, we are prepping for the summer energy. You know, it's time to get outside and enjoy the little bit of warmer weather, the longer days, you know, that sort of thing. That's what I get with this deck. So that is the Forest of Enchantment. And I think the last deck that I'm going to show is this one for springtime energy. And this is Tarot of Light. I know this used to have another name. I forget. I don't know what that name is. And this is by Denise Jarvie, I believe is how you say it, and Tony Carmine Salerno artwork. And this is another one where the pastel colors and everything really lean towards that spring energy, awakening into that, and you know, blossoming, so to speak. And that's what I really feel with this deck. This is another one I don't pull out that often. That's what happens when your collection gets too big. And I have an issue with this cardstock. And I'm really not a cardstock snob in any way. But for some reason, this cardstock, it just, if it's going to clump together where I can't shuffle it, then I have an issue. I mean, I can't even get the cards apart now as I'm going through this for you. So, and it's so beautiful. It's such a shame that I don't use it more often. But that's the reason why, because I have a really difficult time shuffling it. But doesn't it just speak of spring? I mean, just looking at the cards, it really does have that vibe to it. So that is it. That is all the decks that I'm going to show that I tend to gravitate towards in the season of spring. Although if you've been here for 5 minutes, you know I'm constantly talking about I pull out whatever I want to, whatever I'm drawn to intuitively. But these really are the decks in my collection that have that beautiful springtime energy to them. So is it just me, or do you also feel like using decks that are like fairy tale based, or put you in another like fantasy realm, like Alice in Wonderland, or the Enchanted Forest Tarot, or dive into fairy energy during the season of spring? That's the type of energy I want to gravitate towards while everything is starting to come back to life and blossom around me, and would love to hear your thoughts on that. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate you being here. If you like this video, you know the drill. Please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. And until I see you next time, bye.